So the next video builds on XY coordinate with something that is a little trickier to sort of map, but in some ways maybe more common to the way we think as people, and that's addresses. Uh, you do this every day when you go to Google, but you don't think about it. It's always important to remember we are so technologically dependent now that we type an address into Google and it goes immediately to that address, and our minds just aren't blown by the immense amount of data that must exist on the back end to even make that possible. And the entire concept of mapping an address is based on something called an address locator. It's using data such as parcel or property data, or streets like we're going to do today, or landmarks, or buildings, merging them all together and then creating sort of a lookup system where when someone types an address, it looks against that database, knows where that piece is, and plops itself down right in the middle so that you can map it. I'll show you an example of how you can build these by yourself. I think it's important to have that in your back pocket for sure. And then I'll show you the easy way, right? The way to pay someone else to do it for you. Always a good thing to take advantage of sometimes, but again, always be cautious when you're telling someone else to do it for you. It's going to cost money, or in this instance, credits, which is a concept we haven't talked about much yet for Arc Pro, but I'll introduce sort of at the end of this video. So first thing is we're going to go to a different area. We're going to go to actually Buffalo for this one. So I want you to go to New Map, and it'll come up like this. And you can navigate to the data. Philly U. 2020. Boom, bada, boom, bada, boom. February 6th class. And it should say Niagara streets. And I want you to just drag them in. This will be in Niagara County, which is a county a little north of Buffalo, where you have sort of Niagara Falls and some other cities. All right, so I've got my Niagara County here, all good, all ready to go. I'm going to pause it for a second here. What this is streets, and I think we used an example of this in Philadelphia in our first class. Anytime you have a piece of data that you've dragged in, I think a key first step is always to look at it. All right, so if you open the attribute table and you scroll, you'd see that each of these street segments, it doesn't look like there's 15,000 things here, but that's because, as we learned last time, these are broken up by individual segments, right? So it's the X100 block of street Y, right? The Y100 block of street Z. And what that allows you to do if you scroll through the data is you see these cool things like left from address and left to address. That's pretty neat, right? This is the 1200 block of Lake Point Drive, right? There's all kinds of cool little pieces of information spread throughout here. And since that's stored in the data, we can use it to our advantage to build sort of a lookup that'll look at this road data and map a point. You could do the same thing if you had property data, like parcels or homes. And those who like what I teach you in this video, I definitely recommend on the YouTube channel you check out some of the videos in creating spatial and non-spatial data on how to build more complex address locators. Today I'm just going to sort of go through one of the basic ones. And what we're going to map is businesses. This is another type of data we'll come back to regularly throughout the semester. And I want to show you sort of where you might get some data like this. It's going to be different in kind of any place that you work. But in Buffalo, for example, I can search something and say Erie County diverse businesses. And a lot of cities will sort of have portals like this that'll actually take you to a listing where you can understand businesses owned by people of color or businesses owned by women. And they're usually important indicators because, typically, historically, it has been sort of white males that have dominated sort of the business climate in most cities. And as cities begin to move more towards trying to make themselves more equitable and sustainable for all of the residents and visitors, this concept of sort of fairness and trying to work more with businesses owned by people of color or women, it becomes more and more important. It's fairly staggering. You'll see in many cities, Memphis is an example, Buffalo is another, that even where African Americans or Hispanics may be 60, 70% of the population, they end up owning 2 or 3% of the businesses. And it can be really sort of staggering and shocking when you think about it like that. So it's really important to have these resources where you can really understand who these businesses are, what they operate in, how scalable they are, and all that. So this is just sort of one example, but you could come into an MBE, which means Minority Business Enterprise. WB means Women Business Enterprise. And a lot of these things, not all of them, but a lot of them will let you even sort of download. And that's cool, right? If I downloaded this and then I opened it, it would give me, hopefully it doesn't crash anything, get to see sort of the business's name, where they're from, the city, how you email, what they do, and a lot of other jazz. Every database is different. Some have even more information than this, but a cool resource. I'm looking at it on a paper here, and I can see some in Buffalo and some in Rochester and some in Niagara. But wouldn't it be really cool if I could actually visualize where they are on sort of a map? And I can when I have addresses. And so I want you to jump to the Niagara Businesses spreadsheet that I have in the class folder today. And I just pulled sort of a quicker one, for Niagara Falls, which is one city in Niagara County, from a different data source that has sort of the company name, some information about what they do, when they were certified, and then whether they're certified minority-owned business or women-owned business. And I want to use these fields right here, and I want to map these. I want to take these off the map and see where are they exactly in Niagara Falls. Because once you know where something is, then you can start to see how many of them are in a given neighborhood. How far are they from another thing? Where do they sort of cluster? And this works with any piece of data, a business, a crime, a spray ground, a crash. Seeing things visually is the first step to being able to conduct complex spatial analytics. So first thing, and I believe we practiced this about 2 weeks ago or 3, so it might be a little stale in your mind, we can't get Excel into ARC directly. We have to convert it to a CSV. And you'll do that by going Save As, and picking CSV. Again, if you're me and you're not using a Windows and you're using a Mac, you have to choose this Windows, separated value. I'll save it to my desktop. I'll call it Niagara Businesses CSV. Just keep getting out of it, save and get out, and save and continue and all that jazz until it's done. You can come back into Pro. You can refresh where you're storing it. Desktop, I think. Sorry about that. Desktop, right-click, refresh. And if I scroll down, I am totally blanking on what in the world I called this thing. Yeah, this is somewhat embarrassing. There we go, Niagara Businesses CSV. I can drag it in, same as before, I have it, and it's ready to go. Now, you can see when you right-click, that's where we're going to go. When you map an address, it's called geocoding. I can't do it yet. Well, I could, but I don't want to because the only thing at my disposal right now is the pay resource, and I don't want to pay for something. I want to actually be able to build something on my own and map, and then I'll show you, obviously, a pay resource that can be sort of much better. But I want to show you how to build your own address locator. And so with that, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to find whatever folder I'm working in for the day. So I had that February 6th output, and I'm going to right-click it. I'm going to go to New, and I'm not going to find it because it's not where I always remembered it to be. Give me one sec. I think it's in Tools then. Search address locator. There we go. All right, so come into tools. It used to be a right-click thing, but now you'll do just kind of create address locator. All right, so building an address locator is I'm effectively going to build rules for a piece of data set. There's several styles, and the videos I had mentioned to you before, if you want to explore, I'll teach you how to do some other ones here, like single field or single house, which is where you might use a property record data set, right? Every single house, usually any city or county, stores tax and record information, and you can utilize those to effectively map out a point. But right now we're going to do dual ranges, meaning I have data on the back end structured in a way where I can see two different addresses, the left side of the street and the right side of the street, just like we looked at when we opened Niagara Streets. So I'll pick that. It's going to want to know, what am I referencing? Okay, you're referencing the streets. Now, it is going to do its best to match what it sees in the streets to these. And it's only going to require a couple things from you. Anything it has with an asterisk, it requires. What this means is, hey, what is the field in that data that tells me the from address on the left side of the street? Most streets data will have something like this waiting for you. And there it is, left from. Where's the to left? Left, gotta find left to address, left to address. And keep filling them in. Where's the from right? Right from address. Where's the right to? Right to address. Full street name, I think there's one called Complete Street up towards the top. Keep coming down. You can match as many of the things as you want. I like to be sort of completionist here. Street name field, type, and see if there's a direction field. Prefix direction. Suffix, meaning what comes after. Is there a suffix type? Post type. Suffix direction. Post direction. And then the only other thing that really matters when you come down, there's a left county and I think a right county, just again to be completionist here. But the only other really required thing to help out is going to be the zip code. And that just sort of helps if you're going to be mapping things that are in like multiple cities. You know, they might have sort of two streets that are the same name, and you don't want to run into that. And so in this, I think it's called postal, but I'll come all the way down to left zip code. Left zip code is going to be left postal. And right zip code is going to be right postal. Cool. So I've got what I need. It wants to be saved somewhere. Come on in here and pick your folder. And I'll just name it Trial Locator. Now I think this will work for like half of these records. And that's just because I found the first piece of data I could find. You know, I'm showing you the basics here. But if you really want to get good at this, I definitely recommend following up on one or two of the other videos, because it'll teach you, you know, about finding even better sort of data to support this, and then mixing the streets with sort of property record data set, because when you have them together in what's called a composite address locator, you tend to sort of have, you know, better success at being 100% accurate. Because again, it'll only be able to find an address if it can see a match in this data set here. All right, so I got it. Niagara Streets, dual ranges, filled all my information in. Hit run. Give it a second to do its thing. Uh-oh. Okay, good. Phew. I saw 2% there for a second. I got a little bit worried. So it's building all of its stuff. Good, good, good. What you can do after that I find it's helpful to sort of drag it. Can you drag it in? Maybe it's just there. Oh, you had to drag it in. All right, let's see if it works. Usually what should happen, now if I go to geocode table, we're going to do this twice. So let's pause here. Now I've hit geocode table, so I'm actually going to start mapping the addresses. It's going to start asking me a few things. This is like a super helpful window. First thing it's asking me is, hey, is your address information in one field or more than one? Well, it's in more than one, right? You know, we had a field for address, a field for city, a field for state, so we're good there. Next, it's going to want to know the locator. Where am I mapping this to? Why did you freeze? And pretty cool thing, right? Anytime you build something, it knows it's here. You built a trial locator. At the end of this, I'm going to teach you how to use this one. That's the one that ArcGIS provides you and charges you, but this is the one that we built. Last thing it's going to ask you, hey, the data you have for that thing you built, here's what I need. Tell me where that address is. Well, it's in that field. Tell me where the zip is. It's in that field called zips. Address and zips. Next. That's just what the points are going to be called. Bing, bada, boom. Run it. And it'll tell me if I was successful, and if so, how many mapped. Boom, 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 boom. Not bad. 26 matched and only 1 unmatched. Not a bad process at all. I can hit no, and now here they are down here in Niagara Falls hanging out. Each of my businesses mapped to the most appropriate address on the street. So that's pretty darn cool, right? It actually was able to read the data that I built and map. And you can do this in any city that you want. That's the point I want to make, is that if you don't want, when you're out of school, you know, because I think you do have access to what I'm about to show you while you're in here, you know, certain credits that students can use, but you won't be here forever. And when you're out and you might want to map these addresses, this is just sort of a quick and easy way to do it, as long as you're willing to take that sort of extra step and you know, take road data in or parcel data in and kind of build the locator to start. But again, I want to make sure I'm showing you sort of the completionist way, and the easier way that is always available to you when you're signed into Pro, as long as you're signed in through the Jefferson account, will be to use the other locator. So more than one field, but this time we're going to pick ArcGIS's locator. And there's that little coin, right? That says it's going to consume credits. So the way credits work, we'll come back to them occasionally throughout the semester. You know, Jefferson has sort of an enterprise license with ArcGIS, and everything that we do on ArcGIS Online, storing data, mapping things, running analytics, costs credits. Credits don't always round out to much. I think they're, you know, pennies, portions of pennies. So you know what we're going to do here, mapping 15 addresses, even if each of us do it, you know, the 45 or 26 addresses, even if both of us do it, I'm talking 78 or so credits, we're talking 3 pennies. You know, so it's totally fine to sort of test it out. And as I said, I think there's sort of a number of them, and I want you to see what's at your disposal here. Asks for sort of way more data, so it can be way more kind of complete. Those who are sort of interested why this is the case, if you watch the follow-up video on the channel in the spatial data playlist called Composite Address Locators, you'll see that you can actually build multiple on top of each other. So you could say, like, first look at parcels and houses. Can't find the appropriate parcel? Fine, look at the street data and line yourself where you should be on the street. Can't find the street? Find a landmark. Can't find a landmark? Find a neighborhood. Can't find a neighborhood? Find a zip. That's why this is asking for so many fields, because it's trying to get any piece of information it can to map me somewhere. It wants to put me on a parcel first, then a street, then an intersection, so on and so forth. Got all my data, go to next. Your choice here. Routing location maybe makes more sense later, so I'll save that. I typically do address location because that'll try to put you right on sort of the parcel or the property. Tend to be a little bit better for sort of future weeks. This really doesn't matter to us because we got 26 addresses, but this is just sort of a way if you want them to sort of zoom in and localize in one area. And then this is also a good one too. Hey, all of my locations are addresses. I don't have sort of like a mix of stuff here, so it's not a problem. Go to finish, run it, Bling blang, bloobity blabbity blue. Doing its thing. Load the locator. Ba ba da ba. It was one better than me, right? It matched sort of one that I wasn't able to. All 27 matched. No need to do the rematch process. And there they are in sort of the same place, right? And probably a little bit more accurate if you were to sort of look at them on top of each other. You can see they'll be slightly different because they did different things, right? Their one here is actually looking actively for the actual property, right? Whereas I only had a street locator, so I put myself at where I'm supposed to be on the street. They're both right? They're in the same general location. Just again, one would be like in the middle of that property and the other would be where it was on the street. So that's address locator, an excellent way when you have just address data to be able to map it and start to visualize information.